You're on. Apple and hot honey
We're on?
sandwich if we came in the hot
All right,
honey
I'd like to
sandwich.
call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Brookfield Board of Finance for Wednesday, December 11th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Nahid is not here. Public comment, I hear none. We'll go on to communications.
We've had correspondence via email from Denise Rice on November 9th, John Barilla November 11th and December 3rd, David Papsowski November 11th, Irene Correa December 3rd, Andy Correa December 3rd, 4th, and 6th.
Okay, thank you. Approval of meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular meeting of November 13th, 2024.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. All right, I'd like to make a motion that we move the Board of Ed next on the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Wendy, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks very much.
Aye.
Thank you.
This means I'm gonna have to go back to the meeting I just left.
Oh.
If we get done, or I'll be really quiet and just.
Well, you prefer to be
Couldn't
here.
get you on there.
Yeah, well, we're hearing about test scores and all sorts of stuff at the CAPE committee. I have some things to tell you, but I believe you already know most of them. The juiciest, most up-to-date information is going to be presented tomorrow at Finance Subcommittee meeting. And I'm not on that committee, but I go as a member of the public to hear everything. I just wish that I could transpose them, because I don't think I bring anything new to you. By the way, it's nice to meet you. What I do bring, however, is good news. And you probably have reviewed the data. The superintendent presented the initial budget idea to us at our last meeting on the 4th. And it was about $100,000 over the status quo. So the status quo is a 3.44% increase, and currently what the superintendent has proposed is a 3.64 increase. And about half of the increase is a state mandate connected to Portuguese bilingual education at the elementary school. There's a magic number of 20 for a language cohort, and if you hit that number in an educational setting, then you need to offer services there. And so we have been operating with a 0.5, and now we'll be going up to a 1.0, hopefully, to attract a qualified person. They're really, really hard to come by. That we also have increased interest in French at the high school, which is great. So we're looking to bump that up a bit to meet student need. And then you'll see that the other, do you guys have, oh, you do have this document, marvelous. You'll see that the other increased investments are all student-driven. And it's a super duper minor thing, like no money at all, but the bottom line here about new co-curricular and athletic stipends, this is so modest it almost makes me cry. Our own Eric Conklin that we share, I think, is continuing as a volunteer, as a ski team instructor, so this doesn't even incorporate what ought to be his salary. So anyway, I really feel like my mission this evening is to gather your questions and comments to be able to transfer them directly to the committee tomorrow, and then correspond either with Glenn directly about this or, to the whole committee. So first, do you have questions based on this document right here?
We got the book walking into the meeting, so we have.
Yeah, we haven't even read it.
Okay, good.
So, I don't
Then
think
this
I'd
is
be.
probably a reasonable starting place for us. And then
There you go.
after tomorrow's meeting, I think tomorrow too, the finance subcommittee will be dividing up all of this, and so people will be paying, like, I'm sorry, your name is it Brianna?
Yes.
Okay, Wendy, nice to meet you. So what they're gonna do is, within the subcommittee, they're gonna divide up this whole binder, and then people are gonna line item, explore it, ask questions, and the questions will be answered mostly by Mrs. Diot, the Director of Business and Operations, and where, you know, where she needs to do more fact-finding, she will, although that is a rarity for her, she seems to be pretty well
She'll
prepared.
do the Word, like we've had a Word document in the
Yeah.
past.
Yes, it has-
And I think they've already started that. I think Rosa
Okay,
maybe
okay.
already had some questions or they have something started.
Usually you
Yeah.
guys bring it to us and then
Yeah.
we
a
look
lot
at
of
all of
time-
your question
yeah,
and answers
it
and
usually
then
answers a lot
we
of the
write
questions
back.
that we have.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even have that document yet,
Okay.
so if it's,
Well, I'll ask
yeah.
at the committee meeting.
Exactly,
There you go.
exactly. So, do you have specific questions about this summary document? To start.
What page was that on?
I was the first one in section 3, I think.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I'm not looking at it because I went to the Board of Ed
That's
meeting when the
fine.
budget was presented the other, last
Yeah.
week, so.
It was
I-
very streamlined.
It
We
was
were all
very,
like,
yeah.
are we still holding our breath? I don't know.
But I think the other big assumptions, that we had talked, John presented at the meeting was the health insurance estimate is based
yes.
on, was it 4.6% or something?
I think
And that
that's
was-
4.7.
4.7, yeah.
And that's what we're looking at on the town side too, right? Is that what we're
Yes.
estimating it at? So I think we'd
Yep.
had a discussion at a previous meeting
Yep.
about, you know, assuming the risk on that. Because this past year it came in lower than we predicted.
Right.
Other years has been up, but
Right.
we're looking at across past years. So that was one of the big drivers.
I think
And then-
that's, yeah, I think that's the one item, we're really uncomfortable with the number. We
Yeah.
just, because of the data we've gotten in past years, it's been all over the place. We're gonna talk about that a little later,
Yeah.
but I would think for your budget, you feel the same way. The health insurance is a huge portion of the
Yes.
budget, and we just are not getting good estimates from the state.
It always has been. I feel like it's always a problem.
Yep.
It comes in late.
It comes in late and then, you know.
It comes in
it's-
April, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't help us.
And yeah, I think Wendy had mentioned the Portuguese language teacher, and part of that was that they have a half-time position for it, but they couldn't get candidates because they were losing candidates to full-time positions. They
Right.
wanted to make it
And they needed it.
competitive,
Yeah.
To be able
and
to-
the need is there, and I guess the state granted a waiver for this year, because they couldn't fill the
yeah,
position
we've
exactly.
Kind
or-
of jerry-rigged the situation, and it's not ideal, and we're really looking to remedy it,
Yeah.
as soon as we can.
Yeah, and you can only get that waiver for a year or two, right?
Yeah, probably,
I'm not even sure,
okay.
I
I think it was
the
something that
full
like,
status.
if you can't find somebody,
Right,
we
right, right.
can't, we can't make you find, you know?
Well, the person who leads that is a modern language teacher, just not a specialist in Portuguese. But there's a paraeducator who is bilingual
Okay.
there. But it's certainly not something to build a program around or meet the needs of those kids. Marcia, did you have questions or comments?
I don't,
I don't
I
have.
can't get that to work, and so I
Okay.
didn't know if you wanted me to pass this out or not. This just
Sure.
came out today.
Oh, okay, so I think I have it on my phone, but I'm really not good with things like this on my phone.
So back to the budget. One of
Yes,
the
sir.
things, the delayed school start, have we assessed that and it's working?
It's
Or have we
ongoing.
assessed the costs that are associated? Because
Ah.
there's extra costs for sports teams, there's a lot of
Right.
extra costs that come into this.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Here's what I know. We just developed or created an ad hoc committee to explore the efficacy and the impact of the Healthy Start Times that it was implemented, I think, 2 years ago.
Correct. But we weren't aware of the financial impact and it's starting to hit us quite hard.
So, with this ad hoc committee, they, as I said, met yesterday for the first time, and they're gonna be bringing recommendations to the board. I think they plan to meet for a couple of months. I can't predict how long, that committee will run. But I think, obviously, one of the lead, goals is to have a budgetary analysis. And when I met with Dr. Burrell yesterday, he said, you know, if the committee recommends that we do away with a Healthy Start Time and go back, it's probably at least $150,000 off the budget in savings.
But that's all transportation costs.
Yes,
right?
it is.
It's all, I mean, the social emotional side of it, as a parent, I am so grateful for the Healthy Start Times for my children. Because the activities go so late. I mean, they have practices, I mean, this isn't the forum to say this, but
Right.
our practices for everything go so late, they're getting home, they have homework to do.
Understandable.
And to be able to get up at 7 and make it out the door versus being up at 6, that hour's critical.
Yeah.
So I think that's something
Yes, I think that the committee is gonna find, I mean, it's a knotty
Yeah,
consideration.
Yeah. I mean, I know my son's not in school anymore, but he was actually more concerned about waking up later. Cause he didn't wanna get home later from track
oh,
and everything else, cause then he was like, I have less time.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't matter.
Our household represented the opposite end of that
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, it's very, I think it's, each household's probably really different, but $150,000 is a pretty big increase with transportation.
Well, that's the
With the
low ball, I mean, it could be, I mean, these are savings that we
Right, no,
get
that's
in
what I mean,
switching
yeah.
back. It could be more than that.
Yeah,
but part of that is also bus driver shortage, right? I mean, that's,
I don't know, I mean,
So,
Dr.
like-
Burrow was saying 2 buses probably, to switch it back. Which I had to take his word on because I have no idea how the alchemy of bus
Yeah.
arrangements work. So that's what I know so far, but I will definitely ask about, Glenn, what specifically would you like to know? You want sort of a timetable on the ad hoc?
I'd like to know what the cost is, like what does it cost us that we've now had it for 2 years,
Okay.
just to understand the extra cost.
I think it's between $150,000 and $200,000 annually.
I heard it was north of that.
Okay, well, I'll dig into it.
would the committee be able to have meet enough and put together something prior to the budget so that we could make an informed decision?
I think that's the goal.
Okay, great.
But in case they determine that it's, they need more time, then it would be a consideration for the
Yeah.
next budget
It's
year.
not our call to make, it's just
No.
an understanding of, if it's $200,000, that's a strain maybe for us, but it's
Yeah.
not our call to make.
Mhm.
It may be a call you have to make.
Right,
Yep, we
but
understand
it's just
that.
good to know, as a driver.
was that cost expected to go up this year, or is it just that from before? I mean, we have a lot of, it's hard to control because we also added CLES, like,
Yeah.
you're not comparing,
But that's why I wanna understand it, right, we don't understand, it's been 2 years now,
yeah,
and it was sold to us as there was no extra cost to this, and now all of a sudden, it's crept up to the point where it's north of $200,000 a year for this delayed start, but when they first brought it to us, it was not any cost, it was all good, it was gonna, in fact, it was gonna save money. That's what it was sold to us, it was a money savings, and now we're finding out as we got into it, which is understandable, like you don't know what you don't know before you do it, and now we're finding out that this is really an extra cost, and the sports team's extra costs, and there's a lot of costs that have gone into this now that are jumped up.
And I'm assuming that goes into the general transportation line?
Yes. And sports transportation, where's that?
Athletic transportation is up 11% and field trips up, like, there's a 25% increase in
But,
general.
I mean,
But that's what I'm trying to figure out where the Healthy Start falls into.
I don't, yeah, I mean, I
Like,
think
is
that's
it-
as much bus driver shortages and having to hire coach
Is
buses.
it sprinkled, like, all through it?
So,
That's what we need to understand, I just wanna
Right, yeah.
understand it, that's why I asked the question, I don't have the answers,
Right.
if I had them, I
Right.
would.
Right,
Well,
well,
this
good
is-
that they set up an ad
this
hoc
is-
committee, get those answers.
Are we saying the extra cost might be because we have to go outside?
I don't know, I just,
Right.
I think
understanding there's extra
Casey has
costs.
that breakdown of like how many it comes
Yeah.
up in all of our
We need more
finance meetings,
information,
but-
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think this,
So
so the
just-
committee will be great.
to recap, I'm asking about, I'm gathering information.
Actually, the Healthy Start was probably a bad term to bring up, why is the transportation costs going up?
Maybe that's the best.
Okay, let's
way.
circle
Yeah.
back.
It might not be
That's-
associated.
All right, well, each of these, they're separate,
They're
But
not
maybe
separate,
connected.
I mean, the
Separate
busing
and
has gone
connected.
up, I mean, and it's
Sure.
11% increase over prior year in this book, and I think you were even over budget a little bit, heading
Okay.
towards over budget in this year's budget. So bus transportation, sports transportation, we talk about special ed transportation every meeting.
Yeah.
I'd like to dig into the regular transportation aspect of this. And maybe the delayed start was the wrong way to start it. It's,
Yeah.
why are
Okay.
these costs going in the
in terms of
direction?
transport. All right.
Yes.
And with respect to the, is it all right if I talk?
Please, please.
With respect to the transportation on this report, that's one of the things we heard about the McKinney-Vento transportation.
You heard about
Uh,
that?
This time the athletic transportation because of extended fall sports season and a driver shortage is what she wrote. That,
Well, that's
but
true.
other than that, she doesn't have anything there as transportation projected to be over budget. The other thing that has changed is long-term subs, which we know that will always change. And then the excess cost grant is, they filled out the form, the
Right.
first draft of the form, and they updated their estimates, so she's estimating we're gonna get more on that. So we're, the shortage was 609 last month, and it's only 600 this month, so it's about the same.
Our sports teams need to stop being successful and making
know.
play into the state tournaments.
So many players.
We need to take it down.
I was just thinking, I mean, the football games have mostly been played.
Well, the last two were
Yeah,
played
but
at home.
the soccer games were in
Yeah,
Hartford.
that's true,
Yeah.
that's
right?
true,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
true. All right, so then I'm drilling into transport costs. I mean, if there's information beyond what's represented on this summary of the November financials, and I'm digging into information such as it exists now about the Healthy Start Time. What else can I explore and bring back?
No, from me, nothing.
I know it's, Bill William, the special ed director, is it Bill?
Yes.
He was saying too, and I don't know who's responsible, but he was saying too with the special education transportation that, there's a bit of a struggle because a lot of it is through Ed Advance and they don't have the chance to look at other vendors. I don't know if that's a contractual thing or,
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I will ask about that.
yeah, I don't know if that's anything that there's much control over, if it's contractual. I mean, it seems like, I mean, that's gotta be an issue for all school districts across Connecticut, and I
Mhm.
just wonder if anybody's finding any solutions to it.
CCM had put on their goals for this year, which I think they've had for many years, to try and work on this special ed issue for all the towns. I don't know if you heard anything more on that.
Yeah, that's, what is, I don't know, do I know? CC?
Connecticut
Oh, yeah.
Conference of
Oh,
Municipalities.
that's, yes.
CCM.
So I am definitely hearing buzz from other board chairs, that this is just it's gonna come to a head. The expenses are a lot to bear for municipalities.
Marcia, how'd they get to the electricity number?
It was-
That number hasn't changed, and it doesn't contemplate the money that we've put aside. That was the 57%.
Oh, yes.
But it,
I mean, we know that the difference right now is there 145,000 in the hole.
and we can cover that with the.
I got that, but now in the budget, they went up a certain percentage going from their adopted budget from 644, they're going up 33,000 to 677.
Adopted budget from,
Or
This year.
this year's adopted budget, you
Right.
had 644. I know that we had extra costs, but you're now running, if we adopted at 644, you're now running at 780.
okay.
And you got in here in the budget 677. So I just asked how we come up with that number, because
Yeah.
that math doesn't work unless we have a story
it-
behind
That
it.
might be because Pura's agreement for the additional charge stops in April, ostensibly. You know, that extra user
Right. Yeah.
fee they're charging?
I don't care how it gets there, I just wanna know the math, goes 644, we're running at a 785 right now, and we're projecting a 677, and I don't wanna get into March figuring this all out, I wanna know the math behind it. What did we do? What percentage did we increase? What did we take into account? What did we use as a guideline, and how did we go from 785
So
to
I-
677?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I know a bit of the story, is that we talked at the finance committee meeting last month about Pura has said that rate only goes to April 30th. Should we trust that or don't trust that? And we thought that's the best data we have now, that we should all trust that it's gonna go back down. That, that's what they've said. Then the second one is that we do have a contract in place that is different than the contract that we had last year. It's a little bit higher, but not a lot higher as far as the supply rates, no.
Delivery rate, wasn't it?
Pura is the delivery rate, and we've
Okay.
got a contract for the supply rates, it's a little bit higher, so I would imagine it's those two things, but I haven't seen the math.
Okay,
So if you do the straight up math, it's 5%, that's what I'm trying to say. If you do the straight up math from last year and you take out the extra costs in April, it's a 5% increase. But I'm saying, where do we get this number? Where, you know,
So I think what you're asking is, we need to go back to Casey and ask her, how did you get to this number of
Detailed electrical
33,000?
calculation like we ended
Right.
up doing last year.
Yeah.
but I don't wanna get into March doing this.
No.
you
I think
know?
No, we can do
I
it
think
now.
she's done it
Yeah.
to get that number, so I think she
Also,
has that information,
yeah.
we just need to ask her for it.
okay,
Yeah.
so what exactly, I mean,
I wanna know her calculations on the electricity cost. How'd she get from A to B to C?
okay,
It seems like that's too low.
Doesn't seem right.
No.
Whatever it is, it don't
and
seem
this is
right.
connected to electricity delivery or overall?
Total-
cost?
Just in
overall.
general.
The whole budget we went through last year, we've gone through these budgets
Yeah.
100 times. It comes down to electricity, it comes down to transportation, it comes down to 5 items.
Yeah,
So, to understand these 5 items up front is gonna help us a long way. One of them was electricity last year was a big problem. Oil heat always crops up too, as in usage, what are we doing, how do we get there, because we're supposed to be using less oil. And again, now we're at 353, or we went, I can't even read these numbers, they're so small, but it looks like we went down a
We
little.
went down.
We
From 330
got
to
better
360.
rates
Got
on
better
the oil.
Right, but these are the drivers that change the
Right.
budget. The salaries go up 3%. I mean, there ain't much that happens there in these budgets.
yeah,
The rest of the stuff pretty much follows suit. There's only like 5 or 6 clunkers. And we need to understand the math behind the electricity, the oil, heat.
Yep.
Because again, that number went down. So again, it could be rate, do we know the usage? Do we have all
Yeah, I mean,
this?
she has some footnotes for
Yeah.
that, so I'm sure she can give us that.
That's,
Yes.
that's all I
I
want,
feel-
just
I
to see
feel
the
confident
numbers.
about
How do we
that.
get there?
and I think what, Marcia, when you mentioned the,
I'm not saying
end
they're
of the
I
Yeah.
just need to.
Pura, is it, the contract, that jives with the memory I have, but then I don't have the exact information, but I can get all this tomorrow.
I know she has it.
Okay.
And we have locked in the rates for fuel, and they're lower, so that makes sense.
Do you have any idea, are those annual, typically those annual contracts, or how long do they typically go when you lock in?
It depends on the rate, if it's a really good rate, 1 year with COVID, we did it like 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we locked it in now through, and we try to do it through June 30th, so, and we usually try to do it on the fiscal year.
Okay.
And then my last question would be, I'd like to see a calculation on the salary negotiations, 108,000 for the one contract.
So I'm not looking at the same page you are, which
Summary
section are you
page,
in?
your summary page, you have $108,000 for funding for contracts expiring.
That was discussed at the finance committee meeting too.
So the thought was that not to detail out a percent increase, and that's the same way we do it on this side, and we have one contract that'll be this year, the highway department, where we'll put.
So that's a salary number, that's not a cost to get to contract.
That's correct.
No, that's
a-
salary, yeah.
It's probably made up of a number of things, the
I don't
salary.
need, as long as it's a salary number, I don't need the answer, but this
Yeah.
was a funding
No, it's.
for the lawyers, I'd like to see
No,
the
no, no.
breakdown of the 108,000.
It's as a
Fine.
project.
You'd like a little more clarity on what that number's made of.
No, I'm good with it, if it's a number that they put in there that they don't, that covers the percentage increase, wherever they end up, that's fine.
Okay, and for, right, never mind, all right,
That's what she spoke about last week.
Mhm.
okay. So just to recap, what information can we get on, electricity, on oil heat, on transport, and then the salary issue for 108,000, are those the,
And the Healthy Start Times.
yes.
committee.
But the Healthy Start Time, I think, sort of got swallowed
Yeah.
into the larger question about
It did.
transportation.
Yeah.
It did, it's
Yeah.
just
Okay.
transportation.
All right.
Healthy start, that's your, all right. And then this one, we're good, right? We understand all these. The McKinney, we've talked about, the electricity, we've talked about, salary savings. The salary savings, you know what I'd like to see on this next report is the change from prior month. Can we get that?
Okay,
Says it, right now it's 100, salary savings is 130,000, what was it last month?
It was 130.
So it hasn't moved. And has anything, any of these numbers moved?
The three that have moved are special ed transportation.
Went what way?
It is better, it went from 290 to
Better by 45,000. Excess cost grant got better by 70. Long-term subs got worse by 28.
Then had we only gained 9? We gained 9,000 from prior month, and you just gave me $60,000. You
Well,
just
yeah,
gave
but-
me,
29 went to 109, right?
huh?
We're from 29 to 109. You're on the excess cost grant?
Yeah, but that's a positive, if we're getting more money there.
Right.
And you
so-
just said the transportation went in a better way down, the
Right.
special ed
Right, got
transportation.
better by 45.
So how are we only 9,000 off of the total, 609 to
Not done
600?
yet.
Athletic
Okay.
transport,
She said 3, that's not right. Okay, so the long-term subs got worse by 28. McKinney-Vento transportation got worse by 10. The athletic transportation wasn't on the last chart, so that got worse by 40. And then all other got worse by 33 because the magnet VOAG tuition's savings of 33 seemed to go away.
Okay.
That adds up to 9, worse.
Yeah. But now, why is the McKinney thing going in a different direction?
so that's responsive to individual family needs, and we can't,
So this number's gonna go all over the place.
Oh, yeah, as long as somebody
Yes,
is
hopefully-
outplaced and
Hopefully
has to have
down.
the
hopefully
services.
down. I mean,
Hopefully they
People
get
move
brought
back
in
into
and-
town.
Of course.
yeah, as families get their housing situations resolved.
Got it. So that's always gonna be
Yeah, we can't
an
pick that
unpredictable
one.
number.
We can hope that it
Rent
gets,
the
that's
house.
always
We wanna
one.
hope it gets better. It's
I
not
think
bad.
multiple districts discuss that.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
I got nothing.
All right, thank you.
I'm going back to the curriculum committee then, thanks guys. All right, but, so what's the best way for me to get this information?
To the
Shall I
whole
mail it
board.
to you?
Yeah,
Whole
just-
board.
Okay, great. All right, I appreciate the clarity of that.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Sure. Thanks. Marcia, thank you.
All right, on to the report of the first selectman.
My turn? Okay, so, I don't know if any of you are aware, we go over to Center School on about a weekly basis, walk through the building, walk around the building. About 4 weeks ago, Sheldon Kahn, remember we had the question about $5,000 a month and they're charging us based on historical. So Sheldon Kahn brought an Eversource rep over there to look at it, to actually look at the meters and say, stop charging us $5,000 a month. They found out that the meter wasn't working. They did a little searching. The basement got flooded. Guess where all the electrical panels are? The sump pump either stopped working or the circuit blew because of what, we don't know. We're working to get temporary power into the building to do the fire, smoke, intrusion alarms. We'll get that done. We are going to go to both Kerma and FEMA because we believe this damage happened during the August storm. We're going to both of them to see if they will cover it. Hanch Electric is who we use for normal to look at these things. They looked at it, and this is way beyond their capability. These are massive, massive. We have our own transformer on site to step the electricity down. It could be anywhere north of $250,000 to $600,000. We just don't know yet to fix it. That leads into the question, do we fix it? Or do we put in temporary power? We're gonna have to put new boards in at some way. Put in boards just to power the things that we need to have powered, that we wanna have powered, smoke and fire detectors, things like that. We're still early days on that, and we'll come back to you as soon as we've got that. It never rains, it pours.
But the good news is the electric bill is down below 500 a month.
To Brian, this is mostly for you. I have been making phone calls. I think I have 2 people who will join the capital committee. I'm confirming that tomorrow. As soon as Bob Belden gets back, I'm going to call a special board of selectmen meeting, hopefully next week early, to appoint those people so you can start.
Okay, good. Are you
Okay.
looking for a third, or are we gonna live with
I'm sorry?
Are you looking for a third?
Yeah, well,
Well,
I'm looking for a
our-
third, but if we have two, we've got
The
you.
candidate John is interested, the candidate that we interviewed is
Yeah,
interested.
yeah, I'm talking to one
Oh,
of
you
them
are?
right
Okay,
now, yeah.
okay.
And I think he's gonna say yes. So then we would have 4 of the 5, and then you, at
Is that
least
where
you
you're
could
going?
start,
Yep.
right? Okay? The police ad hoc committee, we've had trouble. We had 4 Republicans put their names forward. I found 2 more people who are willing to sit on that committee. So we're going to form that committee also for the police headquarters. I don't know if anybody drove by the historic society building directly across from Congregational Church, actually Cattywampus, right? We had it in the budget to roof that.
Mm-hmm.
The guys came in one day, completely took off the roofing, completely replaced all the plywood, and completely put a new roof on. And it looks like they did a really good job. We have a new system that we're rolling out this week. There has been, I don't know if you saw the case in Fairfield, where a guy's property was sold out from under him.
Yep.
People falsified documentation. We've got a new system that residents can sign up for, that you will get notified anytime an action is taken with regard to your property. And you just get automatic notification, no cost to the residents. For us, it's a small systems charge, but we think that's a really good idea, given there's more and more fraud out there. On the cell tower, I met with Ray Vergati of Homeland Towers at the CCM convention this week. This week? Was it this week? I'm getting a little confused. This week. He told me he will be getting us their proposal, financial proposal, within the next 2 weeks. That means we could take it up at the Board of Selectmen meeting and hopefully set a date for residents to vote on it. We'd like to give residents, I think it's fair to give them at least a month's notification, right? So they have time to look at it. Regarding that, I had gotten, I don't know if you guys have gotten this, I've gotten numerous discussions with people. I didn't know anything about the cell tower. I didn't hear about it. There was nothing out there. We need better ways to communicate with our residents, and we need to communicate in ways that they're getting information. Newspapers out, we send out the spotlight to 1,300 people every month. 300 and some odd actually open it, the email. So I'm looking at a system, you remember the Code Red system we had? It's a system like that from the same company. It would cost some money. I think we can fit it into our IT budget and start getting notifications out. It'll go to Twitter, it'll go to Facebook, we can feed anywhere with one process. And I think we need to do that, because I literally, in the last 4 months, have had at least 40 residents say to me, I knew nothing about this cell tower. And I said to them, well, we've discussed this since January at every single Board of Selectmen meeting and a couple of Board of Finance meetings. But people are not going on our
No.
website. They want stuff pushed to them.
And if you don't drive on this side of town, you won't see the
Correct.
signs in people's yards to understand
Correct.
that there's
Yeah.
something going on and.
Yeah, and also it would help us, we could be a little more accurate,
Mhm.
right? The cell tower isn't on the Williams Park property. It's not. It's on a piece of property the town bought to build a school.
Yeah.
It is close to the Williams Park, yes.
Yeah, I mean.
It is
kind of,
close to
yeah.
Gursky, yes, but legally, it's not on the Williams Park. And people, I just want to deal with facts. People can interpret it the way they want. And so on that issue, this would help, I think, a lot. So I think we're going to move forward with that. The veterans exemption, the legislature in their infinite wisdom made a decision that veterans would get a complete no taxes on their property. There was some questions as to whether it was the house and the property, outbuildings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're starting to qualify that. Our initial cut at it was, we thought it would cost the town about $100,000. We got a report today from Tammy Fisk, our tax assessor. Right now, it looks like it'll be somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000, because we've been reaching out to veterans, right? $45,000 and $50,000, which we'll put in the budget and we'll have a better number for that when we get to the budget. And that has to be completed by the end of December. So we should be good on that. So it's not, we originally thought it was gonna be almost 100, but that's gonna be a relief for them. And that's pretty much it, unless you have questions for me.
Just any updates on the town center district development, or I know that the building got demolished like overnight, and then I don't know when the food emporium is going in or anything.
Yeah, the food emporium is still going in, contrary to what some people are reporting
Is
on
it the
Facebook.
big space on the
Yeah.
right?
They are taking the end of the building as you drive into the Four Corners from the
Okay,
south.
bigger.
They're putting their equipment in.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
They are, probably late spring
okay,
is gonna be the start date. They did have some problems with supply,
yeah.
right? But they are definitely going in. I talked to Paul Scalzo, the developer. He's gonna put up a big sign, said, the food emporium coming, right?
Because right now it says like this past summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Brook, the running store has already
I
moved
saw
in.
them.
Did
Yep.
they open?
Yeah,
Oh, I saw
yeah,
that
I
they
think they're
moved in.
open
They
now.
keep freaking me out every morning. I drive to the gym, there's a mannequin in the window, and I keep thinking somebody's in there at 5:15 every morning. I'm like, why are you there? And then I drive back and I'm like, nope, same person, still there.
Yeah.
But the sign already says like important plaza,
Yeah.
so that implies,
Yeah.
that they're- yeah.
You know, and on that, just quick update, 777 Federal Road,
That
they
was the
finally,
just took
after
down.
7 years,
Yeah.
have knocked the building down.
What's going there?
What happened is 2 months ago, the blight panel, we had given them an abeyance of blight fines because they said, oh, we're just waiting for Aquarian to do something. They wanted the shut off in the street versus on the property and something with the sewer. And they just kept dragging their feet. So 2 months ago, I reinstituted the blight fines retroactively.
Oh.
Oh, guess what? They applied for their demo permit and they knocked it down. Then they said, well, we can't get dumpsters. You call up Oak Ridge, you can get 20 dumpsters tomorrow.
Yeah.
We relayed that information to their representative, saying the blight fines are gonna continue.
Yeah.
They have big trucks there today. They're gonna clean that up. And we want it unblighted,
Right.
right? We want it to look, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be unblighted, safe,
Just,
and it's hopefully they'll get there, and then hopefully develop on 20 Station Road. That is moving forward. We should have, the contracts have been signed back and forth between all the parties. They're about 6 inches thick. They will be taking the building down, right, and clearing the brush in the property early spring. With the state, they have to inspect everything, every single thing you do, they have to inspect. And then over the next 18 months, they will remediate the property. So 18 months from now, that property should start getting developed, actually developed.
is that the,
Next to Green Bubbles, down from Green
yeah, and is
Bubbles,
that the apartments or something
Yeah,
that
it's
were, was that when I was on the
Brookfield
board?
Village,
that's
too.
gonna be
That was,
apartment.
that was the same thing
Yeah.
when I was on the board, okay.
Yeah.
And what's going in 777? Do they have a plan for it, or it's just,
The owner put, and has an approved 3-story building,
uh-huh,
he got 7 years ago, with commercial on the ground floor and apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floor. I have not seen them come with any changes to that. So that's what, and that will include, you know, the red building that's been empty?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
That's part of that property. He owns both.
okay.
And it looks like they may be taking that red building down. If they follow the plan,
Such a shame, it was just built and
It-
then nothing.
you know, that red building never got a full CO because they did a lot of things in it that they didn't get approved. And it was expensive to go back and pick, it was a long, it's been up for like 10 years. So that's included in that plan. When they will actually do the development,
Okay.
your guess is as good as mine.
I mean, is any of that development also hinging on the Danbury sewer capacity? Like,
The
I thought-
Danbury School?
no,
What?
no, Danbury sewer capacity, isn't there like an issue with?
Yes,
How much?
we got an additional $200,000, 200,000 gallons, right? In capacity from Danbury.
Okay.
Most of that was taken up by developers who, they get like a commitment from the WPCA. And there's still, I think, at the last I heard was about 30 to 40,000 gallons still available. 777 did get an original commitment from the WPCA, they let it expire. So where they are right now, they would have to go back and get, they're probably gonna need, I don't know, 10, 12,000 gallons. And they have to go through that process.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother, do you wanna get into what Danbury's doing with their sewer plant? They're gonna have to build that back up. We've been talking to the WPCA. Danbury needs more capacity. That plant is built, has a capacity of 15 million gallons. To meet federal requirements 7 years ago, they limited their capacity to 11 million gallons. That's when they asked us to drop ours. Now, they're gonna need more capacity. So their original plan was to improve the facility with about $125 or $130 million bond. The quote came in at $190 million. Danbury took a step back and said, that's too much money. Our opinion there is, now the WPCA would pay for that bond if they do bond for something. So if they're 5% of the use, they'd get 5% of the bond. Originally, Danbury wanted us to go out and bond 5%. We told them, no, you bond it, we'll pay you. Makes no sense for 5 towns to go out and spend $60,000 to $100,000 to issue a bond when you can issue one. And we'll sign the agreements, but that's a ways off, I think. That's a ways off. But they will at some point have more capacity, right? Also, our multifamily housing moratorium that we put in place is gonna help that, because there are a bunch of projects being built now that have capacity already locked in, but the amount of capacity is not really there. So even if we hadn't put the moratorium in, there probably would be that constraint. You can't build because you can't get the sewer.
Do you know what our number is for affordable, what percentage of affordable housing is bumped up to now? I know.
What percentage is
Yeah.
affordable? I'm glad you asked that question. We're putting together a package for Brian and the Capital Committee to try to estimate what the value of the buildings coming on board the next 3-4 years would be, because that affects the grand list and affects the capital. So I have, Greg Dembowski is working on right now a list. He gave me a list, I can send you the list tomorrow, of all the housing that has affordable and the number of affordable units in it. What I asked him to do is give me a list, total housing, total units, next to the number that are affordable. Affordable is usually about 20% of the total. So as soon as he gets me that list, I can send it to you. Right? But it's usually no more than 20% of a building. 777 would be 20% affordable, right? Remember, he was gonna use 830G, he's the guy that wanted to build a 7-story building.
Yep.
And we told him no, we'd sue him, and he came back with a 3-story, so about 20% affordable, I think. I'll have to double check that though. And I would just like to say one other thing. There's been some concern, there was an article in the Patch that Scott Benjamin had done, and both John and I had spoken to the reporter at the time. And, I spoke to the reporter for about 45 minutes. And I want to say again, and I've said this to Glenn in writing, this board has done an incredible job. When I first took office 7 years ago, Brianna remembers this, right? And Eileen, you remember part of it. The Board of Finance wasn't talking to the Board of Ed. Now we have good, ongoing, clear, transparent communications between all the boards. And I said to the reporter, it's a direct result of this board reaching out and doing a really good job. You guys have done, in my opinion, an incredibly good job. All the boards, for the last 7 years. I'm sorry that wasn't in the paper, but I can't force a reporter to write everything I say, I guess. Okay, that's it from me.
Questions? All right, thank you. We'll go on to Marcia, please.
Okay, you've got the PowerPoint that, with respect to the current year revenues, the one revenue that is, the first revenue that is over budget on the report is investment income. Investment income It's caused by the rates being higher. The cash is about the same as what we had predicted, but the rates are higher than what we thought. That back a year ago when we did the budget, we thought the rates were going to be dropping, and so for this year that they were projected to be about down to 3.5%. And they just went below 5% in November. That both of our accounts, our investment accounts, follow the STIF rate, State Treasurer's Investment Fund. That's a common thing for governments to invest in, although it's uninsured, and ours are collateralized or insured, and we're still getting the same rates. So I put the rates for STIF in here just so you can see. Would be nice if I had the months showing up, but or maybe they do on yours. Oh, they do. They're there. That so you can just kind of see the trend, and that's just directly related to what's happening with the feds. So we're about our investment income is projected right now to be about 700,000 higher. We had that 200,000 that we put in for probable but unknown revenue. So that's why it shows up as 500,000. The second one that's good news. I have no bad news on revenue on anything, but revenue.
But what are you gonna use going forward in next year's budget? Have you thought about that number yet?
I
We
have
have not
not thought
decided
about
yet.
that number yet. But I'm
And we don't wanna commit right here. We wanna get all the departments in first, and then look at it and come to you guys and the Board of Selectmen with a well-reasoned,
yeah. But I mean, as far as interest,
Yeah.
we don't know. I haven't
no.
looked at it yet.
I think my personal opinion, John, is interest rates will drop, but I don't think they're gonna drop dramatically, because I don't think the Fed feels that they have reined in the CPI. If you notice in November, the CPI was up, particularly food, by 8%, I think it was 8%. So I don't think the Fed is gonna make any major changes in their effort to lower inflation, and that will mean that they will keep their rates high, which in turn means that probably the rates will be, I don't think they'll be 5, I don't think they're gonna drop to 2 though, that's my guess.
For the supplemental motor vehicle, that number just came out, it always comes out mid-December, just came out yesterday, that it is higher than what we had anticipated. We had a budget of $740 collected, the actual is $850. The collection rate in the first year is down on that, just because people get so confused by the supplemental taxes. And so I think it catches up when they get their July bill and have to pay it. But it's got, last year, it had 93% collection rate, same as last year, SALI. So if that was the case this year, it would be 790 collected. So hopefully that'll be a little bit higher than what we had in our budget.
I don't follow that. What's the 849 versus the 790?
849 is the amount that we're sending bills out for. 790 is what we expect to collect.
Got it, thank you.
It's 93%, yeah.
Yeah. And that will go up next July, because a lot of people get the October bill and they don't pay attention to it. But then their July bill comes, because the October bill is an interim bill for when you purchase a car, and
With respect to expenditures, we know of nothing that's big out there, that the budgets remain very tight, that we don't see anything loosening up, but we don't have anyone coming to us yet that needs large amounts of money. That we have quarterly meetings starting on Friday and continuing through next week with the departments, so we may learn more. I think we talked about this quickly last month. We have a new bond, and I thought we always didn't put the interest in the budget year, but this year it got in there that we have a first payment in April. However, we also have premium that we didn't expect, so we can offset those too. But other than that, we don't have any known issues with the expenditure budget. For 2025-26, the operating budgets, I sent them out about an hour ago, to the people to fill out theirs, for their operating, they're due back January 16th. And what we do is we update all the salaries and make sure it ties out to last year for adjustments, things like that. For every one of the salaries, if it's overtime or if it's sporadic wages, we did an analysis of the last 4 years to see how it's being used so that we don't over budget or under budget. And they're minor adjustments that some are using overtime instead of instead of temporary labor or vice versa. But nothing big. For the capital budget, I am now back to the capital budget, and that'll be out, the book will be out by the end of this week. I just have to pull that together. For last year, it's completed. The audit is completed. It's on the website. That in December 21, we decided to renew with the auditors for 5 years. They gave us a quote for 3 of those years, and they said year 4 and 5 are just too far out to get a quote. So we don't have a quote yet. I'll reach out to them. I wanted to reach out in January just because they have a big deadline in December, and I would imagine any quote that we ask for in December is going to be, well, they're very stressed and might be a little higher than what we might see in January. So we'll find that out in time for the budgets. I would anticipate it going up substantially just from what I see in the market. But if it goes up too high, we're not committed to, we don't have any contract for 5 years. We can say, oh, we don't like that, we're going out to bid. So we'll get that data. Debt policy didn't go to the selectmen because they didn't have their full contingent in December, but it's scheduled to go in January. But we wanted to talk about this health insurance that we always have a problem with the health insurance, that what do we use? And then if we use, like last year at this time, they told us, oh, it's gonna be 7%. So the Board of Ed, which is a huge part of their budget, used 7%, but it ultimately turned out to be 2%. So the estimates that we get from the state partnership plan haven't been reliable. Then we, for a few years ago, we hired the state's actuary thinking that we'll get some good estimates from them, and that was not the case. We've talked directly to the state controller to say, what if you, because every town has this issue, and the state has this issue, that what if you set the rate, like in October, and then whatever you're over or short, you adjust for the next year. That we have some towns that have tuition to other schools, and that's how they do it. That didn't go anywhere. And then at one time we thought, okay, well, we don't want it to look like we're padding the budget. We don't want it to be too low. What if we use the actuary's rate of what they're projecting rates to go up? Our own actuary for our OPEB account, that wasn't very reliable either. So we haven't found a reliable method to project in time for our charter. And they vary quite a bit in the last 5 years. 1 year it went up 1%, 1 year it went up 10.5%. And so that's also a problem. And so what Steve had sent you was an idea of using an internal service fund. And what that would do is we would set a rate, the Board of Finance would be in those discussions. We would set a rate in November of the year before the Board of Ed's budget is due. and we would use that rate. So we would put, so let's say the rate says that we put $12 million in this other fund, and the actual health insurance bills come in and they're higher, and it takes $13 million to pay them. The fund would have a deficit, and then the policy gives up guidelines of making up that deficit, or if it came in at 11 million, how to use that. But it would do two things. It would have one consistent rate throughout the whole budget process, and it would hopefully help smooth the rates so that, all right, every year it's gonna go up 6% or whatever, as best we can, smoothing that. So we just wanted to do an introduction to introduce that idea to you. We did a similar thing, before I was here, we were self-insured, and we did the same type of thing, that there was a premium that was set, and then it went into an internal service fund, and the actual would be higher or lower, and then the premium the next year would be recalculated. That an internal service fund is always used for a self-insured. I haven't seen it used for this type of thing, but we did run it past the auditors, because we wouldn't want to go through this whole thing and then have them say, we're not gonna say that that's in accordance with GAAP. But they are in agreement. They did reiterate about having guidelines for if it's too high or too low, which we've tried to put in there.
So what this allows us to do is obtain a certain level of certainty as to what the budget expense is gonna be for next year. And also, if that number comes in vastly different, gives us up to 3 years to correct that, either way. If the actual comes in below what we put in the internal service fund, we can use those funds to offset future expenses. If it's under, then the plan says we will recoup that in the next 3 years. And then we do it on a year-to-year basis. So instead of going 10.5%, 1%, 8%, 3%, we really could smooth it out. Pick the right number, a good number, if it's 6, 7, whatever it is. We're suggesting the 5-year average, which I think is 4.7%, as the increase we will put in the budget, understanding that it might change. We think that's a worthwhile thing to look at, because remember last year, I know I got a few complaints. Well, why did you cut the school budget by $400,000? You don't love the kids. We cut the school budget because their medical expenses went down $400,000, and they didn't need that money, right? We got a better number. So this is a way to address this issue, and I don't think this issue is going to go away.
In another year, it might have been 3 years ago, where they gave us an estimate, and then it came in a lot higher, and we'd already gone to a public hearing before we got the final number from the state. And now what do? We go to the public hearing, but then we charge them a higher tax rate than was projected at the public hearing, and so that it can go either, it has gone either way.
Yeah, it's going both ways.
I mean, we do that at my company, it's a self-insured, and just kind of, we pay a premium, and some months in the beginning, it's a lot, you know, the first few months it's a lot, and then they bring it down a little bit, and then usually thankfully there's an excess, which gets returned to us in April, and they kind of pay it down the percentage, so it doesn't, we don't have to pass it along, so it's not an awful idea, but sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, because if you have a bad claim year, you don't get anything back, and then you don't have anything rolling into the next year, so it does.
Yeah. And if you look at that Excel, you have the printouts here, but Steve sent the Excel, and if you start playing with those numbers, it's a whole lot better to get a handle on it up front than to let it get out of control. and there are stopgaps that if it's the deficit, and I put highlights in the policy, because those are just numbers that I use, but if the deficit's over 5%, you have to make that up that next year without spreading it. And,
Yeah.
each one, whether the WPCA will do this or not, because their budget is not done until May, they may not
Need to?
need to. But everyone would have a separate calculation of fund balance
And the way we're proposing this, it does have guardrails in it, so we can't just keep on hitting the internal service fund and let it grow and grow, the deficit grow and grow and grow. We have to address it, have to bring it back up, have to make it even, but it will, I think, smooth out these, because this is a huge amount of money for us, as both a Board of Ed and a town.
So anyway, that's just an introduction to it, for you to look at it, for you to think about it, and we can talk about it more.
Yeah, if you have questions, just send us questions, we'll talk about it. We just wanted to float that trial balloon.
I think what'll be important is how do you set the rate? Because that's where you have opportunity to play games, right? So you gotta have a methodology that allows you to set that rate that doesn't allow itself to be gamed, right? I think that's important.
Right now, I think we're using the average of the previous 5 years, is that right?
Well, there's 4 things in there, because it's the first year, it's the average of the 5 years, plus, if there was a deficit, that over no more than
Oh,
3
that would do
years,
it, right.
plus if the deficit's over 5%, the fund balance, that in the current year, so that there's 4 different categories that it's based on, but the first year, it would be the average.
Yeah, but if you change methodology every year, you don't have a methodology. That's why. you
But,
gotta think
no,
hard about that.
but we don't have any fund balance, so it's.
I got it, no, the fund deficit's zero, or the fund surplus is zero, I got it. You do
Correct.
have it, it's just zero.
Yeah, so year 2 and the subsequent
add that
years,
stuff in, I
it would,
understand that.
it would be based on that.
And you might wanna see how do other towns do this?
I have not seen another town.
I haven't seen it.
The other thing, every time you talk about it, you talk about what we do after we have a deficit to recover it. I mean, that already gives me the yellow
Pause.
flashing lights, right?
Well-
How about we start with a surplus and manage the surplus?
A
right?
surplus would be great, that,
Well, if you
and we
manage it
could
right,
put money in, but people don't like a surplus either, that, because,
better than a
it's
deficit.
overtaxing, that,
Yeah.
but,
But the same
I mean,
methodology
if we have
applies, you know.
if we have excess revenue this year, we have our calculation to put a certain amount in the general
some in
fund,
there.
maybe this is the first opportunity to throw some into this
true.
fund without it being an additional tax burden.
If we created that internal service fund, you could fund it up front with some money.
Yep.
That gives you a cushion, because Brian raises a really good point. I do not want to see this grow,
No.
because that's irresponsible.
And so part of it is that why would, the separate fund balances is to try to keep everyone honest, that, I could say, oh, well, if we didn't do separate fund balances, I could, play with my senses maybe, not that I would do that, and it says that I won't, it says what we're basing it on in here, but, that, and then have the other 2 help cover my poor planning, that, so I tried to think about some of the different things, and Steve had added some more to, not game the system, to have it as, a helpful thing and not a,
Yeah.
manipulative thing. So, that's all I have for mine.
Any questions? Okay, no questions. Audit we went over, capital, Brian, you're starting up, Steve gave some of that,
Everybody abandoned me.
everybody abandoned you. Discussion of debt policy is not in our hands anymore. New business, no, other items that come before the board, none.
Yeah, there were no transfers.
No public comment. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Meeting's closed. Thank y'all.
That was quick.
Bring it up.
I have to go home now.